Hello class, this is lesson 3-7 about adding and subtracting rational numbers. So let's begin with two fractions. If the denominators are the same, then all you have to do is combine the numerators. You're going to keep the denominators, and then you simplify your final fraction. Let me give you an example. For instance, if I had 1/6 plus negative 5/6, since their denominators match, I'm just going to combine 1 plus negative 5, which is negative 4. So negative 4 over 6 is my fraction. I could divide them both by 2, and I get negative 2/3, and that's it. All right, here's another one that you might encounter in your lesson. For instance, the mixed number negative 3 5/9 plus positive 1 2/9. I'm going to rewrite these as improper fractions. So that's negative 32 over 9 plus 11 over 9. When I combine those, I get negative 21 over 9. I can divide both of those by 3, and when I do that, I get negative 7/3. To finalize my answer, I'm going to rewrite that as a mixed number. And I'm going to divide 3 into 7, which is 2, and I'm left with 1 as my remainder. So my final answer is negative 2 1/3. Now let's review adding and subtracting two decimals. So the thing that you need to remember for this is just simply to make sure that the decimal points are lined up. Okay? So I'm just going to put that note there. Here's your first example. If I have something pretty straightforward like 120.2 plus 14.05, what I would do is just rewrite my values where I'm lining up the decimal points. I'm going to add a 0 at the top, and now I can just add straight down in my columns, and I get 143.25. So that was pretty straightforward. I'm sure that you've learned this in the past. Here is another example now where I have a negative decimal, negative 3.27, minus negative 6.7. If you remember, two minus signs is the same as a plus sign. So really this problem is the same as 6.7 minus 3.27. I'm going to go ahead and add that 0 and borrow from the 7. So 10 minus 7 is 3, 6 minus 2 is 4, and 6 minus 3 is 3. So my final answer is positive 3.43. All right, now what if you have a fraction and a decimal that you're asked to add or subtract? Well, you want to turn them both into the same format. So either turn them both into decimals or both into fractions, and then you can combine them. So we're going to do one example, and I'll show you both ways. Negative 1.4 plus the fraction 3/5. So why don't I turn them both into decimals? I have negative 1.4, and 3/5 I already know is 0.6. Since they have opposite signs, I'm going to subtract them. 1.4 minus 0.6 is going to give me 0.8. But since the bigger number was the negative 1.4, my final answer is going to be a negative 0.8. The other way that I could have done this is changed my negative 1.4 into negative 1 4/10 plus 3/5. I could simplify that to negative 1 2/5 plus 3/5. And then since they have opposite signs, I'm going to rewrite that as an improper fraction. And now that they have the same denominator, negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4 over 5. So I could have done either converting them both into decimals or both into fractions. Whichever one is easier for you is what I would recommend. So now we're going to practice adding and subtracting unlike fractions. This will probably be the hardest part of today's lesson. So your goal, first of all, is to make the denominators the same. And there's different ways that you could do this. One of the ways is simply to find the LCM, that's the least common multiple of the denominators. So that means if you were going to list out all the multiples of both denominators and find the first multiple that matches, that would be called the least common multiple. So then you would multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. so that their denominators will match. Another way that you could match the denominators is simply by multiplying them by one another, okay? So what this is going to do is it's going to make a bigger denominator, and so most likely you'll have to reduce your fraction in the end, but if you're not that great with finding the least common multiple, then this is a great way to start. So 1/2 plus 2/3. I see a 2 and a 3 for the denominator, so I'm going to multiply each fraction by the denominator of the other one. So then I'm going to get 3/6 plus 4/6. Now their denominators match. And I can just add the numerators together to get 7/6, which rewritten is 1 and 1/6. So let's do this a few more times. I have 3 and 5 as my denominators, so I'm going to multiply the first one by 5 over 5 and the next one by 3 over 3. So I'm left with 5/15 plus 6/15, and combined they add up to 11/15, and I don't need to simplify. The next one says 5/12 plus 1/4. Now the denominators are 12 and 4, and I can just multiply that 4 by 3 and give me 12. So that's what I'm going to do to save some time. So that becomes 3 over 12. Together they add up to 8 over 12. I can divide them both by 4, and my final fraction then is 2/3. All right, so hopefully this is making sense, but let's add some negative numbers in the mix. -5/6 minus 7/9, so I have a 6 and a 9. The least common multiple is 18, so I'm going to multiply the first by 3 and the second one by 2. So I have -15 over 18 minus 14 over 18. So now I'm thinking -15 minus 14 is -29. And because it's an improper fraction, I'm going to rewrite it as -1 and 11/18. All right, the next one is a negative plus a positive. I have 8 and 2, so I'm just going to multiply the second one by 4. So I have -3/8 plus 4 over 8, and that adds up to positive 1/8. I had to catch myself. All right, the next one says -1/4 minus -2/3. So first I'm going to get rid of my parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite it as -1/4 plus 2/3. 4 and 3 are the denominators, so I'm going to multiply them by each other to get the denominator of 12. So the other one becomes 8 over 12. And -3 plus 8 is 5 over 12. And I'm done. So these were the easier ones. We're going to move on now to mixed numbers. And remember, there were two different ways that we added mixed numbers before. One was by rewriting them, and then the other one was by adding them in their parts. So first, let's rewrite these as improper fractions. So the second one would become -28 over 11. 5 and 11 are the denominators, so I'm going to multiply one another by the opposite denominator. And I'm going to get some big numbers now. -242 over 55 plus -140 over 55. Together, they add up to -382 over 55. And then if I divide and rewrite it, it's going to turn into -6 and 52 over 55. Okay, so big numbers, but it's very effective. Now, like I said, the second way is simply to add them in parts, but because I have negatives, it might be kind of tricky. So let's rewrite our problem, and I'll show you how we could have added these in parts. So first, we're going to add the -4 and the -2. And combined, those add up to -6. And then I have -2/5 plus -6/11. All right, the denominators are 5 and 11. So I'm going to multiply The first one by 11 and the second one by 5. And then I have negative 22 over 55 plus negative 30 over 55. Together, they add up to negative 52 over 55. And now when I combine that with the negative 6, my final answer is negative 6 and 52 over 55. So again, it's completely up to you which method you want to use. So let's try one without any negatives. 3 and 4/9 plus 7 and 7/12. So I'm going to add these in parts. 3 plus 7 add up to 10. Okay, that's the easy part. Then I have 4/9 plus 7/12. Okay, so the denominators are 9 and 12. And I think the least common multiple that I could think of is 36. So I'm going to multiply the first by 4 and the second fraction by 3. So I get 16 over 36 plus 21 over 36. Combined, they add up to 37 over 36, which is an improper fraction. So I could rewrite it as 1 and 1 over 36. Now, added to the 10 that I started with, I have 10 plus 1 and 1/36 for a combined total of 11 and 1/36. It's a lot of work, but I know you guys can do it. Let's move on to another one where I have a negative and a positive. Negative 2 and 1/3 plus 6 and 3/5. So again, there's two different methods. So I'm just going to add them in parts. So negative 2 plus 6 is 4. And then I have negative 1/3. Don't forget the negative, plus positive 3/5. These look a lot easier to combine. So I'm going to multiply the first by 5 over 5 and the second by 3 over 3. And I have negative 5/15 plus 9/15. Those add up to 4/15. So to conclude, 4 plus 4/15 add up to 4 and 4/15. All right, hopefully you guys are catching on. All right, let's do one more like this. Here we go. 5 and 4/11 minus 2 and 2/3. So let's do our 5 minus 2. We'll combine the parts. And then I have 4/11 minus 2/3. Okay, I'm going to multiply the first by 3 over 3 and the second by 11 over 11. So I have 12 over 33 minus 22 over 33. Combined, that is negative 10 over 33. So really, I have a complete 3 taking away 10 over 33. So my final answer is 2 and 23 over 33. There we go. And that's the end of our lesson now. So I hope that it made sense reviewing fractions and decimals and how you would add and subtract them. But please let me know if you have any questions when you come into class.